Hello and welcome to Talent Weekly Office Hours, the segment in which we distill this week's news on talent, work, and education. I'm Daniel. Every Friday, the members of Future Talent Council receive a weekly digest email called Talent Weekly. It's a curated selection of the most important news from around the world, curated by our editorial desk. This show, Office Hours, aims to look at some of those key featured news pieces and ask for more context. What does it really mean? Why is this development important to me? And how can I use these insights in my work right now? With me today is Charles-Henri Besseyre de Horts, Professor Emeritus at HEC Paris. Welcome, Charles-Henri.
Yes, good morning, Daniel.
Calling from Paris, I assume?
Yes, I'm based in Paris now, yes.
Charles-Henri, from your perspective, what's the most important thing in talent right now?
Well, the talent issue is critical for most companies, especially for some jobs, IT jobs and all the rare competencies. So we have a real talent war going on all around the planet. To be honest, I interviewed a number of companies for a benchmark I did around the world, and all companies told me that we had a big issue around talent attraction and retention.
So the general market slowdown that we're experiencing has not had any real effect on the war on talent, you'd say?
Yeah, I would say obviously you have all these big layoffs especially in the tech firms, but it doesn't prevent companies to experience a lot of shortage, and some activities. If you look all the business sector of hospitality and so on, they have experiencing a huge talent demand, but I mean they cannot fill the jobs.
No, 100%. I hear you. If anything, firms see. I mean, there's a little bit of an opportunity, and sometimes you can access talent that was previously unavailable. But a lot of people, I think that we talk to, are more keen on investing their way out of the recession, if you may, right?
Yeah. That's again. I'm not sure that we are really experiencing a recession. We are experiencing certainly a slowdown. That's true, and we had also the big resignation. You had also the quiet quitting thing, but all of this puts tension on companies, especially for the rare competencies, and we have a huge demand. I mean, I see in France, everybody in all the big firms, the CAC 40, the big international firms are, looking for talents, and it's not easy, especially in some regions of the world.
No, 100%. So I want to bring up here, these are two articles from this week's Talent Weekly, right? So we have the 4-day, it's the trials, and as you know, more and more data is coming out of the 4-day work week trials around the world, right? And then we have ChatGPT news that has been dominating. If we go to the latter, I wanted to highlight these two, right? I mean, AI over the course of this week is kept dominating the news, right? Since the launch of GPT-4, that we talked about last week, both Microsoft and Google have launched their respective AI applications, right? I mean, alongside what is probably 1,000 startups, right? But both of these giants, to simplify it, are taking the AI technology now that we've been talking about closer to everyday working life, like by integrating it in software suites such as Microsoft 365 and similar, right? And then in practicalities, that software can transcribe your meeting notes for you during the call, summarize long email threads into quickly actionable items, right? Create specific charts in Excel for you, or turn your emails or Word documents into great PowerPoint presentations. All of this work that we've been spending a lot of hours on previously, right? And it sort of means that the very nature of work, practical work, desktop work anyway, is changing before our eyes, right? If you go to if you want to comment on that.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, since we have seen the emergence and the real emergence of AI large scale, because what is important with the ChatGPT story, you know, is really the extension of the use of AI, because AI was more or less reserved to some activities and some, you know, business issues. I mean, everyone was not really touching AI except in some personal experience, such as if you look at all the GPS guide, you know, you are in your car now. I mean, we are using, you know, Waze is using AI to some extent. So in our everyday life, we have been using AI for a number of activities, but this is a big change. You're right, because all the basic activities, you know, the time-consuming activities, and for HR, you know, if you just take the example of HR, and you have all these issues around how to write a work contract, how to answer, you know, simple questions. I mean, clearly ChatGPT and all the AI solution will kind of accelerate, you know, the automation of this kind of task. And the question now is how you are going to have a big issue. You are going to have a big issue around reskilling and upskilling, you know, a number of jobs. And in HR, you know, a number of people are still doing administrative work, you know, and despite what we have seen in the past 20 years. But the question is, what are we going to do with these administrative HR people, you know?
And we'll get to that, because simultaneously, and this is, I think this is in scope for you from an sort of HEC leadership development angle, right? Because simultaneously, when we see that development, right, simultaneously we see these 4-day work week experiments coming in and being evaluated, and it's gaining traction, right? I mean, there's quite a lot of data now indicating that both workers and productivity are better off with the 4-day work week, right? There are, however, as we indicate in this piece from CNN, also situations in which it clearly doesn't work, right? I mean, hospitals cannot be closing on Fridays, right? Medium and small business owners now sort of find themselves a little bit, and that's a major part of the economy, as we know, and the employment base. Medium and small size employers and business owners find themselves sort of between a rock and a hard place now, trying to maintain operations while workers' expectations might again be shifting, right? So with these two pieces, GPT and the 4-day work week, I want to take a step back and ask you, I mean, you represent one of the best business schools in the world, and you're developing some of the best leaders in the world. If we start adding all these things up that we discussed, you know, you take the shift to, I mean, the pandemic, right? The shift to hybrid work, AI, the 4-day work week. I mean, the past couple of years have asked more of our leaders and managers than maybe ever before, right? How would you describe, this is my question, sorry for going on a tangent there, how would you describe the characteristics and key abilities of an effective leader today and tomorrow?
My God, that's a huge question. If I had the full answer, I would be very rich, you know. But clearly, what you said, all the changes in the environment you just described, and the 4-day week. Just one comment about the 4-day week. We have a very interesting experiments going on also in France, and there is one company, LDLC, which is a electronics and computer distributor, retail, and there are about 2,000 people, and they have been working on the 4-day weeks model since 2 years. And we, you know, that's interesting to talk with the CEO. And all what you have in the article you showed and you sent me are true. I mean, more productivity, more better well-being, and so on. But they've been able to reorganize the work. And I link to your question about leadership. Clearly, we have a very different kinds of leader. We need different kinds of leader. The first big change for me is moving from what I call the high posture leader. You know, that means traditionally our education on leadership was based on leaders who were, you know, on a high position to some extent, you know, high. Now we have an environment. You talked about the 4, you know, changes in the environment. I do think that we need people who are much more in a servant leader position. That means people who are still leaders. I'm not saying that they are, but they have to be in a much more humble position. Humility, I think, it's one of the key characteristics. You know, also one other characteristic I would mention is authenticity. I mean, authenticity is critical. Now, especially with the young generation, you cannot say something and do not doing it, and not doing the actions in line with what you are saying. So the consistency between what you say and what you do is very critical. So I would call for much more authenticity. There is also one other characteristic I see, especially during the pandemic. It has been an emerging idea, but I think it's even stronger today, is empathy. Empathetic leadership is also very important. In other words, I would say we have now what I would call normal leaders, people who are much more in line with the people they are managing and so on. You see, we are not with the superhero. The superhero leader, I mean, for me, it's just not the model that companies should follow today.
No, not exactly. And because I talk to I've been talking to global heads of talent acquisition, members of Future Talent Council all week, right? And what you hear is retention, right?
Yes.
After years of disruption, how do we maintain the people? I mean, yes, war on talent, we got to be recruiting, but we have to retain the people that we've got, right? And as we know, leadership and managers are the key to retention. We've always known that, right?
Yes,
but
exactly.
Now, but it's a collision of powers, right? Because that's true and it's a key priority. But if you were a manager and a leader in 2018 and now, that's a different job.
Yes, perfectly. I mean, clearly. And one thing that is becoming also very hot on the leadership agenda is what I call creating a sense of purpose. Something around the purpose issue. And as you know, what young generations, but older generation, including mine, because I am a baby boomer, as you know, and so what I would say is when we talk about purpose, is really to have something that is greater than just the strategy. Strategy is necessary, but why are we doing this activity in our company? What the company is really doing, and obviously the planet issue is becoming very hot in most European countries. I'm not sure everywhere, to be honest, because I interviewed, for instance, for my research companies in China. I'm not sure that China is still on this level. Indian companies, I think, are more aware of the planet issues, but clearly in Europe, we are the region of the world where the planet issue is very hot on the agenda, and the young talent. What we have seen in France, in other countries, young talents or young graduates, such as HEC graduates, they choose companies now because of the engagement of companies and leaders for the planet. You see, and they will not take the job even if it's well-paid job. For instance, to be honest, Total, the oil company in France, the big oil giant, has difficulties to recruit. Because the young talents, they don't want to join a company that is polluting.
No. That's also changing landscape. I mean, attracting talent, right? That's another one that should have been on the list of these unraveling big changes, right?
Yeah, but the retention issue is very important, because many companies, and you're an expert on that, it's employer brand. Okay, we talk about employer branding, but employer branding is just advertising, and it's what is most important, as you say, is what is my experience with my manager. What is, if I have a bad experience, as you say, it's a good reason to leave the company. So obviously the employee experience, day-to-day experience is critical. And who is responsible of the day-to-day experience? It is the manager, basically.
Yeah, no. I mean, it's an old truth, right? But like you say, you can have the best employer brand in the world. You can have great pay. You can have a 4-day work week. You can have the best AI tools, right? And you can have all of that. But then, like you say, you come in to work virtually or in person, and if it doesn't click with the manager, if it's a bad leader, you're off.
Exactly.
Right? All bets are off, right? But I want to come back to that leadership thing once again, because yes, you have a unique angle, because yes, you represent the business school, but you also I would call you a bit of a CHO whisperer. Right? You talk to a lot of corporate friends of ours, right?
Yes, that's right.
If I am now a corporate leader in talent or in leader anyway, how do I invest in this leadership development? Because we can all see our leaders and our managers. We ask more of them. How do you support them?
So in terms of development of leadership and this kind of I would call the 7 kind of attitude, 7 leadership type and more humble leaders. Clearly it starts with exemplarity. You have to demonstrate as a business leader, and as a senior leadership, that you are actually changing your behavior, you are adapted. So that's the first thing. I think exemplarity. But obviously, there is a whole issue around development and training. So I would say some development, some programs where you ask people to, to change their posture. The way they behave. I would say some interesting stories, because I've seen business schools, including HAC, getting some interesting learning expeditions towards less advantaged regions, people, and so on. So take being aware of what happens outside in the world, I would say, and clearly number of experiential module, and practical kind of thing. I mean, concepts are important. And I am a prof, but I would say doing. Learning by experience is critical. And again, I insist on exemplarity, because I have never seen a change in an organization, especially hierarchical, because whatever we say, we have still hierarchical organization, even if I am convinced that the more flatter, more empowering organization are the future. I would say we need to have some models, role models, and the role models, it's when you look at the senior management and so on.
But if you're now looking at those investments, I'm just thinking, to simplify it a lot, because we've always been sending people to an MBA or to HEC or to other business schools, right? We've always been doing that. But do we have to be more prioritized to just acknowledge internally that to say to a manager, we understand that the situation has changed. We want to support you in that. Because I think if you're not open and vulnerable and transparent with that realization, I think maybe we're just piling new knowledge without, acknowledging that the fact that we have a challenge together, right?
Yeah, I mean, clearly, again, I said training is one solution, but it's more, it's also the experience, the kind of, for instance, of the issue of around mobility is also important, and you mentioned the word vulnerability. That's very interesting for me, because vulnerability. You know why I think it's a very interesting word? Because there is one thing I didn't mention yet. It's the importance of trust in organization, the trust issue, and what the new leaders should reinforce, develop, is the ability to trust and to be trustful. And vulnerability is the first foundation of trust, because when I trust someone, I become vulnerable. For instance, Daniel, you asked me to do this interview, you asked me to talk, you become vulnerable because you trust me, you see? And that's why it's important. And again, it's not a single answer to develop these leaders of the new style leader. I don't know how you call that, but it's a number of, I would say, approaches and training, mobility, exemplarity, day-to-day behavior, and so on. So again, we've got plenty of tools, and the talent manager and the L&D, the learning and development people are a big job to do. Yes.
No, 100%. Charles-Henri, thank you so much for your time here today. Worth reminding, if you want to know, if anyone listening would want to know the Talent Weekly newsletter that we're discussing, we've provided a link below. Charles-Henri has been writing very eloquently on both GPT-4 and the 4-day workbook as well. We will be linking to those pieces as well. And then both Charles-Henri and myself will obviously be at the Talent Summit in June in Stockholm to discuss these issues and much more. So if you haven't registered your participation, head into futuretalentcouncil.org/Stockholm. And we're very much looking forward to seeing you there. Charles-Henri, thank you so much for today.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to talk with you. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you.